Okay, so the dividend per share was literally one division. Okay, this is where it gets a bit more involved. There are actually two different kinds of shareholders, ordinary and preference. You will only need to pretend that you're ordinary for the DI. You won't be able to get information about preference doing research. So only being ordinary for your assignment. How do they differ? They differ in that preference shareholders get a guaranteed percentage of a set dollar amount of the company's profits first. Their preference because they get their money before everyone else. The ordinary shareholders share any leftover profit after the preference shareholders get their money. So sometimes, if the company hasn't done so well, there might not be any left for the ordinary people. Preference shareholders always get a little bit in dividends. Ordinary shareholders, they get the scraps of what's left over. Okay, so if a company is doing well, everyone gets money. If a company is not doing so well, you might get preference shareholders get all of it, and then ordinary shareholders don't get anything to share. So what does that mean mathematically? You have two formulae here, so I'll give you some writing time for that. For a preference shareholder, they get a particular percentage known as the dividend rate of a particular par value for every share they hold. So the formula for preference shareholders is dividend paid, number of shares times by the par value times by dividend rate as a decimal. Can you get that down, please? Right, you've got a separate formula for ordinary shareholders. Ordinary shareholders get a certain dividend per share from the last video, the last exercise you'll do on the timeline, for every share they hold, but only after preference shareholders take their part of the profits. So dividend paid for ordinary people is number of shares times by the dividend per share. Can you get that formula down, please? And can you write this example for... that first example. If you look at this example, does it mention anything about a par value or any percentages here at all? No, so you assume that that's an ordinary shareholder. So you'd be like div paid, their ordinary, equals the number of shares, they have 3,400, times by the dividend per share, 4.25 cents. I'm going to do that in dollars, so 0.0425 equals $144.50. So this person, if that person was in that situation and that company paid out 4.25 cents per share dividend, that person would just be sent $144.50 in the mail. They don't lose any shares, they're just given that money. Dividends are usually paid out twice a year, every 6 months. And that's what I'm currently doing with my son. My son has a share portfolio. When he makes a dividend, we build it up. Eventually he can buy another share in it, so that the next time they pay dividends, he's going to have an extra one. And then it will slowly build on top of it. So. But that's what I mean by, it tends to be older people that earn money off of this because they started ages ago. And so they slowly build up and they might have thousands of shares in the company. We can't do that right now because we can't afford many shares in the company. Our next, company declares it will pay a 6% dividend on $2 par value preference shares. So this is a preference shareholder. Your formula, div, paid for pref people, is the number of shares. They have 17,200. Times by the par value in that example. What's the par value? How many dollars? $2. Times by the dividend rate, which is 6%. What is 6% as a decimal? 0.06. So that's the working out. 17,200 times by 2 times by 0.06. So that preference shareholder is going to get $2,064 dividend. Why is it so much more? Because they got a truckload of shares, 17,200. And they're also guaranteed to get them. Let's have some writing time, but you're homeworking now. To end 7D.2. You'll finish those pretty quick. Work on your DI after that. Next lesson, I'll show you where to find the dividend information. If you desperately want to know that, like one of our students before, I'll show you individually. But just make sure you're buying and selling and break even stuff.